In the heart of a small African village, under the shadow of ancient trees and amidst whispers of folklore, there lived a young woman named Chinyere. She was beloved by her family and friends for her kindness and beauty, and it wasn't long before she met and fell in love with a gentle, hard-working man named Emeka. Emeka's family, however, held a dark secret, a secret his mother, Madam Chioma, guarded with fierce jealousy and a heart full of bitterness. Madam Chioma had always controlled Emeka's life, shielding him jealously from anyone who might take his attention away from her. To her, no woman was good enough for her son, and when she learned he intended to marry Chinyere, Madam Chioma's anger grew into something twisted and dangerous. But Madam Chioma was not just any mother. Her power ran deeper than anyone in the village suspected. Chinyere soon realized the weight of Madam Chioma's resentment. It began with whispered insults, cold glares, and unexplained bad luck that seemed to follow her wherever she went. But Chinyere's love for Emeka was unbreakable, and despite his mother's behavior, they were married in a beautiful ceremony filled with songs, blessings, and hopes for a joyful future. Days after their wedding, Chinyere moved into Emeka's family home, as tradition dictated. The house was a grand old building, with high wooden beams, intricate carvings, and walls that seemed to hold secrets of their own. But despite its beauty, a chill ran through Chinyere's heart every time she passed by Madam Chioma's room. Madam Chioma kept her distance, watching Chinyere with sharp eyes that held no warmth. Her whispers, her sidelong glances, and her icy tone hinted at her true feelings. Chinyere tried to be respectful, greeting her mother-in-law each morning and helping around the house. Yet no matter what she did, Madam Chioma always found fault. One morning, as Chinyere carried a basket of yams to the kitchen, Madam Chioma's voice rang out from the shadows. "Ah, so this is how my son's wife moves? Slow, clumsy, like a turtle. Does she think this is her father's house?" Madam Chioma sneered, her voice low but filled with venom. Chinyere felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, but she held her tongue. She had promised herself that she would be respectful, that she would not let Madam Chioma's bitterness ruin the love she shared with Emeka. But Madam Chioma's anger only grew, and her resentment began to take on a sinister form. On the nights when the moon was full, Chinyere would hear strange hissing sounds outside her window, and she'd see shadows slithering along the walls. She tried to ignore it, but deep inside, she felt that something dark was watching her. When Chinyere found out she was expecting her first child, she was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to share the news with Emeka, and when she finally did, his eyes sparkled with happiness. They embraced, both laughing and dreaming of the little life they would soon welcome into their world. But when they told Madam Chioma, her face twisted into a scowl. "So you think you're bringing a child into this house? A child who will take my son's love from me?" Madam Chioma muttered, her eyes narrowing. "We shall see." Chinyere shivered, but she brushed off Madam Chioma's words as jealousy. Yet, as the days went on, she began to feel a strange sense of dread. It was as if a dark cloud was hanging over her, suffocating her joy. And then the nightmares began. In her dreams, Chinyere would see a large, sinister snake, its scales glistening under the moonlight as it slithered toward her. The snake's eyes gleamed with a cruel intelligence, and its hiss echoed in her mind, filling her with terror. The snake would coil itself around her, squeezing tighter and tighter, as if trying to crush the life growing inside her. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing, as the snake's hissing lingered in her ears. She tried to tell Emeka about her dreams, but he dismissed them, saying they were just nightmares. "You worry too much, Chinyere," he would say, laughing softly. "Mother may be strict, but she would never harm you or our child." But Chinyere was not convinced. She began to notice more strange things, the way Madam Chioma would watch her with unblinking eyes, the hissing sounds that seemed to follow her even in the daytime, and the chills that would sweep over her whenever her mother-in-law was near. One night, After yet another terrifying dream, Chinyere couldn't bear it any longer. She visited the village elder, a wise woman named Emeka, who was known for her knowledge of ancient curses and dark magic. Chinyere shared her fears with Emeka, her voice trembling as she described the snake in her dreams and the malice in Madame Chioma's eyes. Emeka listened in silence, her eyes narrowing as she took in every detail. When Chinyere finished, Emeka leaned forward and spoke in a low, grave tone. "I have heard of such a curse," she said. "It is a dark magic that allows a person to transform into a snake and attack their enemies from the shadows. The snake's form is a disguise, a way to strike without being seen. If Madame Chioma is indeed using this magic, then your unborn child is in great danger." Chinyere's heart pounded. "What can I do, Emeka? I cannot leave Emeka or this home. I am bound by my marriage." Emeka placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. You must confront Madame Chioma, face her without fear, for such curses feed on weakness and fear. You must also protect yourself and your unborn child with the amulets I will give you. They will guard you from her magic, but only if your heart remains strong." Chinyere nodded, feeling a flicker of courage rise within her. She took the amulets, their warm energy pulsing in her hands, and returned home with a newfound determination. That night, as she lay in bed, she clutched the amulets tightly and waited. She knew the snake would come, as it always did, slithering through the shadows to strike fear into her heart. But this time, Chinyere was ready. As the moon rose high, she heard the familiar hissing sound outside her window. She watched, her heart steady, as the snake appeared, a massive, dark creature with eyes that glowed like embers. It slithered closer, its body twisting and coiling as it approached her. Chinyere held the amulets tightly and whispered, "You have no power over me, Madame Chioma. I am no longer afraid." The snake froze, its eyes narrowing as it hissed angrily. It struck at her, but the amulets glowed brightly, forming a barrier that the snake could not cross. The snake writhed and thrashed, but it could not touch her. In a furious rage, the snake transformed back into Madame Chioma, her face twisted with anger and frustration. "How dare you defy me?" she snarled, her voice filled with venom. Chinyere stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "Your darkness has no place here, Madame Chioma. Your son and I will bring light and love into this world, and nothing you do will change that." Madame Chioma let out a furious scream, her form flickering between human and snake as her curse began to weaken. With one final desperate strike, she lunged at Chinyere. But the amulets glowed brighter than ever, and Madame Chioma was thrown back, her magic broken. Defeated, Madame Chioma let out a final hiss and slithered away into the darkness, never to be seen again. Chinyere collapsed, exhausted but victorious. She knew that the battle had been won, and that her child would grow up free from Madame Chioma's darkness. When Emeka learned of his mother's actions, he was heartbroken, but he stood by Chinyere, vowing to protect their family with all his strength. Together, they rebuilt their lives, filling their home with love, joy, and laughter, leaving behind the shadows of the past. And from that day forward, Chinyere was known throughout the village as the woman who faced darkness with courage and protected her family with love. Moral of the story: true strength comes from love and courage. Even in the face of darkness, those who stand firm with a pure heart will always find victory. Want more captivating tales like this? Subscribe to Motherland Afro Tales Studios for more unforgettable stories from the heart of Africa.